These days, it can be hard to trust the media. What's true, what's fake, and who is behind the message? I'm a freelance journalist and videographer who has spent years studying the media. Now I'm taking a look at what local, regional, and national news stories mean to us here in North Central Washington. I'm Dominick Bonny, and this is Common Sense. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Common Sense. I'm Dominick Bonny, and today we're going to take a look at addiction issues, specifically the opioid epidemic, and what it's done to communities and people right here in North Central Washington. According to drugabuse.gov, the official government website with information on the epidemic, quote, roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. Between 8 to 12% develop an opioid use disorder. An estimated 4 to 6% who misuse prescription opioids transition to heroin. About 80% of people who use heroin first misused prescription opioids, end quote. Every day, 128 people in the U.S. die after overdosing on opioids. These are mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. And today, rather than throw data, facts, and figures at you, I want to showcase 3 local people who have overcome their addictions and lived to tell their stories. The first person I want to showcase is a man named Victor Estrada, who went from a drug dealer to a hope dealer, as he puts it. And now he works getting homeless people off the streets and helping lead a regional organization called the Central Washington Recovery Coalition. Here's a little bit of his story.
So my upbringing, I was pretty much raised in a middle-class family in California and LA. Started using probably around the age 6 or 7, started drinking. We all grew up together in the neighborhood, started off tagging, and then eventually started getting involved with gangs. We got probably around 13 years old. At the age of 17, I was going back to court. I was about to get sentenced again, and the judge was trying to give me like 16 years, and my dad said, Your Honor, you've been giving my son multiple sentences in juvenile, facilities, and they're not working. He's like, if you can, give me an opportunity to move my son out of state, and we'll see what happens there. And the judge gave me 30 days for violation, and 30 days to move out of the state of California. And when I was 17. Shortly after we moved to Vegas, I was about 17, almost 18. I started working construction, and my boss introduced it to me. He says, hey, you ever tried meth before? And I was like, what is it? And he compared it to cocaine. I remember doing it, didn't feel any kind of high. And then the second time we did it, we mixed it with some coke, and it was over. My daughter was born when I was 20, 1995. The only way I knew how to raise income was by selling drugs. So her mom got arrested when she was less than 5 weeks old. Me and my friend were like taking turns, like doing shifts on who was gonna sell, and then we would take showers. And one person would watch my daughter while the other person sold drugs. I ended up leaving for a couple days and left her with her aunt, and I get a phone call and they told me that my house got raided, my daughter was taken, and the reason why I gave her up for adoption, so first they told me, you're never gonna see your daughter again. I was sitting in the county jail when they told me that, and when I got out, I was like, okay, what's the point of living if I can't see my kid? And I went on a suicide mission. I was on meth for 29 days. I went from 185 pounds to 117. On the 29th day, I ended up in the emergency room. I'm self-admitted. So 2015, I reached out. I was like really big on social media, like airing out my problems with my life. And one of my friends reached out she had 10 years in the program, and she said, Victor, man, you've been in the program before. Why don't you just go to a meeting? And I pretty much tried to bargain with her, like, hey, if you go to a meeting, I'll go with you. And she's like, well, I'm out of town, so just go, and I'll go with you tomorrow. So I walked back into a meeting. My niece was giving birth at the hospital, and I just decided, like I told my niece, I'm gonna go check out this meeting, and she was happy because she told me that if I was using drugs or any kind of narcotics were in my system, that she would never let me hold her kid. So I went to this meeting, and that was the start. That was back in March of 2015. I shortly after had a relapse with a couple drinks, which to me is like, you gotta start over. So I got a new clean date and I stuck with it. I've been doing what I have to do for my recovery ever since. For me, it was like looking deep inside myself and asking myself, why were you getting high for 20 years? And I got to like look at myself and I hated myself, because I gave my daughter up for adoption. So I numbed the pain, and I always told myself a lie, like, oh man, you just love this lifestyle. So for me, it's all about, like, 12-step program is about change, growth, who you can become and how you can help others. And the crazy thing I learned in the 12-step program is there's a question, there's like, how does your higher power speak to you? And when the first time I went through that question, I left a question mark, and then when I was reading that step with my sponsor says, how did you get back in the program? And I told him who reintroduced me to the program. And he's like, that was your higher power talking to you. And my sponsor is an atheist, and he doesn't believe in God. He believes in a power greater than himself. And for me, I believe in a power greater than myself. I'm not going to preach the Bible to people, but I just know that there's something out there greater that's doing something for me that I can't do for myself. My girlfriend is just somebody that I was in active addiction with, I used to use with, and the last time she was incarcerated, she reached out to me and she's like, hey, when I get out, I want to hang out with you. I want to try what you're doing. And I was just like, nope, not going to happen. No, I'm good. And when she got out, went to a meeting with me, and we've pretty much been in a relationship since a couple of days after she got out. It was just something that I never thought was going to happen, and it turned out to be the best thing that happened in my life. Central Washington Recovery Coalition is like my baby. To me, it's just a way to bring awareness to the community, to help end the stigma, to bring, to let people know that recovery is nothing to be ashamed of. That people are dying out there, because of addictions, and there's a way to get out of there. There's people that struggle with mental health issues that, they can't even speak on it because they're scared of being shamed by the public. So we're the group in the valley that's bringing awareness to all that. I've lost a lot of friends due to the opioid addiction, and just last week, somebody overdosed in Wenatchee, and this is in this town. You don't see stuff like that. Like, you don't see it in the paper, like, oh, this many people have overdosed in Wenatchee. You might see there's a drug raid going on, but like, I know two people that overdosed and one person that died in the last 10 days. Don't judge people. Don't look at somebody and think, oh, they're just a piece of garbage because they use drugs. Look at it like if it was your child, or if it was your mother or your grandkid, it can easily happen to anybody. So what I do for work, like, I literally drive around the city of Wenatchee, to some parts of East Wenatchee all day long. I usually start around 10 in the morning after I go to the office for an hour. I go out of the streets and I do homeless outreach. I look for anybody that's homeless, and try to interact with them and engage them in services. It can be anything from like handing them a pair of socks and some bottled water to try to get them into housing. It just depends on what the needs are for that person. And one thing that I've learned is, like, working with the homeless people is that a lot of them are just looking for a hand up, not a handout. So I just kept working with them, and the cops were constantly reaching out to me like, Victor, can you help this guy? And we finally got him housed. It takes a while. It's sad that it takes that long, but it does. I mean, I went up to the state capitol and I've advocated up there, and I've met senators and legislators and shook hands with them and taken photos with them. And it's just like, wow. Like, before, it was like my pictures were all booking photos. So like, I was always told, like, stick with the winners. So I get people that want to be a part of my life because they see what I'm doing and they want to get what I got. And I'm not talking about the material stuff. I'm talking about, like, the spiritual stuff. Like, I got a smile on my face. I didn't used to smile. I have good friends. I have people that I trust. People trust me. People have learned how to trust me again. I've learned how to live in integrity. And it's just awesome what can happen, when you're doing the right thing.
A lot of them are looking for a hand up, not a handout. A powerful quote from a man who knows what homelessness looks like right here in our community. What if we changed the way that we look at addicts and those living on the streets? What if we expected them to recover and reintegrate into society? Could that change the dynamic and lead to more positive outcomes? Clearly, it's just one factor in a multi-level strategy to battle homelessness and addiction, but it's a concept worth considering. We'll leave the issue of homelessness there for now, because I would like to take a deep dive into that issue in a future episode. But Victor's story is a powerful one. And stay tuned after the break because we're going to take a look at 2 more powerful stories that might change the way that you look at addiction, addicts, and recovery.
Businesses and individuals have trusted the experienced professionals of financial alternatives for their retirement and investment needs for 40 years. They offer a broad range of investments, annuities, and insurance solutions for people and businesses throughout Washington. Financial Alternatives will assist you in making informed decisions for your future. Call Financial Alternatives today and meet with their advisors.
Hey folks, Carrie from Blueberry Hills. A chill is in the air and it's a perfect time for some old-fashioned comfort food like our amazing Eggs Benedict, chicken fried steak, French dips, soups made from scratch, or fruit pies fresh from the oven. The crowds might be gone, but we're still here for you folks. So bring an appetite and a friend to Blueberry Hills in Manson, where you pick, you sit, you eat, and you visit. Open Wednesday through Sunday from 8 to 3. wildaboutberries.com.
Leaves are falling, winds are blowing, and fall has arrived at Collins Fashions. Cozy, soft faux furs, luscious colors in down coats, sweater jackets, amazing sweaters in chenille and cashmere in many beautiful colors and styles. Your favorite brands such as Tribal, Tommy Bahama, Charlie B, Liverpool, Lassie, Spanx, Joseph Ribkoff, Nick and Zoe, French Dressing, Karen Kane, and many more. And Brighton designs and handbags and jewelry for you and gifts too. All at Collins, where fun meets fashion in downtown Wenatchee.
In a world of uncertainty, public transit remains a safe and effective way to travel. Throughout the day, Link staff members clean and sanitize buses between routes. In addition, all our drivers and staff members are wearing masks, and we ask that all riders do too. While riding Link Transit, we ask that you observe social distancing guidelines whenever possible. Ride smart, stay safe, and be healthy. Link Transit, caring for our communities. Welcome back. The experiences of men and women who are battling addiction can be vastly different. And so often, too often, there are children in the mix, which is why I want to challenge anyone who is watching this to reserve your judgment and keep an open mind, because it's not just about the addicts themselves. When we as a society ignore or refuse to acknowledge the humanity of those in addiction, very often we are turning our backs on the innocent children who are at the mercy of those in active addiction. Addiction, like suicide, affects more than just the people who are victimizing themselves. So often, too often, an individual's addiction affects kids, grandparents, friends, and family as well. But sometimes, for a mother, seeing your choices and the disease that grows from those choices negatively impact your children is a shock to the system that starts her on the path to recovery. At least that was the case for my next guest, Sally Trevino from Moses Lake. Let's take a look at her story.
The day SWAT raided my home was probably the day I saw my life fall apart. I'm originally from Tri-Cities. Addiction started for me when I was 14. My home life was horrible. I was adopted. I was born in Mexico and I was adopted out when I was 10. And my parents, just my home life wasn't good. So I just started running away from home and started drinking when I was 14, got pregnant, very, very young, and just fell into the wrong crowd. My mom died when I was young, and nobody really told me where she was or what had happened to her. And so when I got adopted into my new family, I just really wanted to get accepted by my new mom, and that didn't really go well for me. I fell in love with a boy, which was just all bad. He was drinking. I started drinking. I started smoking a lot of pot, and from then on I started doing cocaine and then meth. Drinking was probably my worst. That's probably what I would say I would black out completely. I would wake up and I would not even know where I was at, to the point where I was sitting naked in bushes in people's houses. I didn't know how many people I had slept with or how many guys had done stuff to me. But no matter what, I would just kind of block it out with another drink. I was a female and I was pretty, and I was just started using my looks, and just my addiction was so bad that to get whatever my next fix, I would just kind of do whatever it took to like get it. They got in and I could just hear my kids screaming. Like, they were masked and holding their guns on my kids. My kids were just terrified. I wasn't even dressed. He wasn't even dressed. They came in from the back doors. It's like I can replay that day in slow motion, and my kids were just so terrified. I mean, they were little and in diapers, and just to see guys in machine guns just pointing at them and just pulling them away, and just to see what my active use had just kind of like basically allowed. Addiction is a disease, you know, because I love my kids, and I know I love my kids to know that I wouldn't just say, hey, I'm gonna go get high and not care about you guys. But that's what I was doing. I kept going back to jail, and I was living with my boyfriend, right? And we were both just, there was no hope for us. I'm sitting in jail one day and I'm like, this is crazy. Well, I'm just gonna get out and I'm gonna go back to the same crap. And then my CCO basically said, hey, there's treatment. So I went to treatment, got out, heard of the meetings. My boyfriend went to treatment too. And I started taking like all these suggestions from people because I was just so tired of I'm not getting any younger. And I've been through a heck of a lot. My kids are at that age to where they're gonna start going through the same, like they're almost teenagers. And I just wanna be strong and ready and show them, hey, Mom went through all this stuff, but she turned her life around. I don't wanna go out. I wanna go out with a bang, you know, like I wanna make recovery the epidemic, you know. I have a job, which I never thought I would say ever. I actually am going back to school, so I take night classes at Big Bend. Surround myself with people who have the same issues as me and go into a room and be like, hey, so this is what I'm going through today, so I need somebody to like help me out with this before I go and mess up everything that I worked so hard for, because it's not easy. And they're there. They help me figure out what it is, what problems made me use. Like, I may not have all of this clean time, but it's a start, and it's hard work, and I earned all of this, and it's, even though it's not that much, it's a heck of a lot, and I've came so far, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. We're real, you know, they can make it.
This is an interview that rocked me, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't wake up at night for months afterwards, staring at the ceiling for a while, thinking about this woman and her kids, and all the kids in this country who have had similar experiences at such young ages. What can we change to ensure that no child has to endure these experiences, and worse, in the future? I don't know the answer, but I do know that the solution isn't ignoring the problem. Because when we ignore the opioid epidemic and its victims, we're not just turning our backs on addicts, we're turning our backs on their children and relegating them to a cycle that too often repeats itself. It's a chain of sorrow that we have the power to break, but not if we refuse to take an honest look at the problem and invest as a country in systems designed to combat this epidemic. As for Sally, she's continuing to make progress in her life. She's gone from working the steps in a program to sponsoring others. She just started a new job as an intake specialist with Hope Source in Moses Lake, which is an organization that is set to open 35 tiny homes as transitional housing in mid-November. She says, quote, "I am super excited to work in a field that I enjoy and am passionate about. I was living and sleeping in my car 5 years and remember the cold nights like they were yesterday. I want to be a positive influence and a part of my community," end quote. She also built and repaired healthy relationships. She and her significant other, Devin, got clean together and are about to celebrate their 4th anniversary. Sally has also reestablished meaningful relationships with her 3 children. Since COVID, she's been there for them, making sure they're attending online classes and furthering their educations. She also just voted for the first time in her life in this election. We do recover indeed. After the break, we're going to take a look at one more story of recovery. It's a story of a man who has gone from an addict to a sponsor, from absentee dad to actual father, from homelessness to home owner. Stay tuned.
As we prepare our feasts of Thanksgiving, settle in for the game, connect with loved ones from across the country or across the table, LocalTel wants you to know we are grateful for the communities we share, for our dedicated local employees, and most of all, for the customers we serve. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving from your friends and neighbors at LocalTel.
If you want to learn more about the world of real estate here in North Central Washington, we have you covered at home with NCWLIFE. Join Crystal Hughes for a weekly dive into all things real estate. She'll sit down with agents, home inspectors, and professionals from throughout the real estate industry to help you either buy, sell, build, or improve your home. That's at home with NCWLIFE. Saturday and Sundays at 10:30 and throughout the week here on your local TV station, the NCWLIFE channel.
Mary Maids of Wenatchee has been professionally cleaning and sanitizing homes and businesses in North Central Washington since 1998. Mary Maids uses commercial-grade cleaners and viricides. Mary Maids has implemented additional safety and sanitation protocols. They are strictly following CDC guidelines for the safety of their clients and employees. For expert help with cleaning and sanitizing your home or business, call or look up Mary Maids of Wenatchee to schedule your free estimate today.
Welcome back. The last story I'd like to highlight tonight is Joey Hunter's. Joey went from an addict and a felon living on the streets of Moses Lake to a recovery coach, loving father and partner, and as of this week, a new homeowner. The first question I asked him in our first interview nearly a year ago was, what do you want people to know who have never had to deal with the opioid epidemic or addiction before?
People that have never had to deal with the epidemic, I would like them to know that we are people.
I want to talk to all you addicts out there that's got yourself a great big Joan and you done tried all the methadone and you just can't leave.
I shattered my ankle, tore my Achilles tendon. I ended up going to the ER that night, having surgery, and that's when I was introduced to opiates. Initially, they were prescribing me Percocet 5 milligrams, and the doctor had told me that I would probably be on these for the rest of my life, and they would test your pee to make sure that you were using the pills. I had went to the bar the previous night, and I ended up using some cocaine that night. So when I went in to get my regular monthly prescription, I took my UA like normal, didn't even think nothing about it, and it's dirty for cocaine. And instantly I was black flagged. You know, initially they treat you like you're a patient. But once they know that you abuse the narcotics and that you're a drug addict, they look down on you. It was really hard to deal with. Every time I'd go to the doctor, I would feel that way, and it's something that I want to try to fix. Before I got prescribed pills, I had a wonderful job. I had a really good life, and it took everything away from me that was good. A friend of mine introduced me to heroin. It was much cheaper. It was more readily available. There was no questions, no P-tests, no nothing, and it took care of the pain. The very last time I went to jail for some pretty serious charges, I got a visit. It was like New Year's Eve, and it ended up being my oldest daughter's mother that I hadn't seen for almost the whole decade. I was out using heroin, and she told me that her father had just passed away, and she was there to tell me that she didn't want our daughter to go through what she had just went through. And that moment, something changed. I'd been out there so long in this state of homelessness and running the streets that I didn't think anybody out there even cared about me anymore. And matter of fact, I didn't even care about myself. There was a room full of people that were like me and had been through the same circumstances and things I'd been through, and so there was that, I could relate to them. There was no judgment. I've never been a real religious person, but I've been a very spiritual person. Things have happened in my addiction and in my recovery that are unexplainable. The only explanation is a power greater than myself, which I choose to call God. The Central Washington Recovery Coalition started about 15 months ago at somebody's house. It was just a group of, 5 or 6 of us that had talked about it previously, and we set a date, and a bunch of people from the community showed up, and that's when we really got that feeling that the community is really trying to do something different. This epidemic is worse than it's ever been, than any drug epidemic that's ever been in the history of the United States. And it's not going to get any better unless people start doing something different. We're sons, we're daughters, we're mothers, we're children. We're just caught up with the disease of addiction, and we can recover, and we do recover.
Next week, we're going to check in with Sally and Joey and see where they're at now in their lives. We're also going to take a look at a Landlord Tenant program that is coordinated by the Women's Resource Center, Bruce House, that gives those transitioning out of incarceration or dealing with addiction or mental health issues stable housing while working with landlords to protect and maintain their properties. It's an exciting program that launched about 2 years ago, and it's had great success in our community so far. One of the things that the folks in the Central Washington Recovery Coalition talk about is breaking the stigma of addiction. And what that phrase means to me is that they are reminding the rest of society of their humanity. Humanity that is so often ignored or disregarded because of the way they look, talk, dress, or carry themselves. But none of that changes the fact that these are still people, no matter what they look like. And in my experience interviewing folks in recovery, I have found that these are people who want to atone for their mistakes. They want to tell others about the disease that held them in a vice grip and try to make sure that no one else follows in their footsteps. They are more effective deterrents to drug addiction than all the DARE programs and Just Say No campaigns and nonsensical commercials comparing your brain to breakfast foods that you can throw money at. I'll take one person who is willing to talk about the horrors they experienced while in active addiction over all the focus grouped, slickly produced anti-drug commercials in the world. Don't show me an omelet, show me the aftermath of addiction. Show me what happens when people don't say no to drugs and what that means for them, for their health, their relationships, and their lives. When I look at people like Victor, Sally, and Joey, I see bravery and selflessness. It is brave and selfless to bare your soul and share some of your worst mistakes with the world in the hopes that it might save others from making the same mistakes you did. This bravery and selflessness, it needs to be showcased. So join us next week, and let's make recovery the epidemic.
Hi, I'm Corey with Rose Tractor, and you're watching the NCWLIFE channel.